Can you believe it? Prices for in-demand watches from Rolex, Patek, and Audemars Piguet are falling for the first time in years. We'll take a look at the winners and losers. Next, amidst the steel sport pandemonium, high-end dress watches are quietly gaining steam. What's going up and why? Finally, Omega is gaining market share in the mid-price segment. We'll speak with our technical data analyst to examine what's happening in the 5 to 10K range. Welcome to the first episode of Time is Money, where the clock is always ticking and money is always moving. We're starting a new monthly series on this channel focusing on the ups and downs of the watch market. As the world's largest luxury watch marketplace, we'll be using our expansive data from over 500,000 listings across 129 countries to dive deep into the numbers. With that in mind, let's take a look at our 3 signs of the times for July 2022. After years of runaway growth, highly sought after models like the Rolex Daytona, Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and Patek Philippe Nautilus are seeing their resale values diminish for the first time. National media outlets outside the watch world are taking notice, and watch investors are wondering what this means for the market as a whole. Based on the data we're seeing at Chrono24 across roughly 500,000 listings, the winners and losers vary by brand and by model. The Blue Dial Nautilus 5711, the hypest of all hype watches, has seen the most significant decline in recent weeks. After hitting a market rate of nearly $240,000 in the first quarter, prices are down over 20% to roughly $190,000. The Rolex Daytona reference 116-500LN is down approximately 15% from its peak in April, and the AP Royal Oak reference 15202ST is down approximately 22% from its March high. Many point to global economic developments as contributing factors here, including rising inflation, the conflict in Ukraine, and the steep erosion of cryptocurrency values. Our data also shows an increasing supply of these quote-unquote hype watches hitting the secondary market. This drives prices down and brings some sense of equilibrium back to supply and demand. As the hype dies down, some sleeper hits are waking up. We're seeing significant price jumps for the Girard-Perregaux Laureato, watches from Cartier and Breitling, independent brands like Moser and Chapek, and virtually all Omega Speedmaster models are rising thanks to the enormous publicity surrounding the Moon Swatch release. Zooming out, the Chrono24 marketplace has seen a significant increase in trading volume of more than 50% year over year in the first half of 2022. This is resulting from both rising prices for some models and increasing sales. So, while some headlines insinuate a wildfire on the loose, the data shows much more of a controlled burn. We turn now to the dress watch segment of the market, where watches that are typically simpler, typically smaller, and typically more precious are seeing some fairly atypical growth in pricing. Let's start with a few key examples. The Vacheron Constantin 56 has nearly doubled since mid-2019, starting at around $8,500 and currently sitting at $17,500 and rising. The reference 4600E in steel with the blue dial has seen the most growth, but you'll find a similar trajectory for the rose gold version as well. The Lange 1815 reference 206021 is a 36mm yellow gold time-only watch. Pre-owned examples sold for an average of $9,100 in July of 2019 and now sell for an average of $15,500 2 years later. And while Patek's 5711 is down from its peak, the humble Calatrava continues to grow. The classic 5196R, for example, averaged a pre-owned price of $14,200 in July of 2019 and today sits at $22,800 and climbing. While it's tough to say exactly what's causing this pricing shift among high-end dress watches, there are a few factors that could explain how we got here. The world at large is still dealing with the coronavirus, but many cities are seeing a return to dressing up and going out. Offices are filling back up and the restaurants have been full for quite some time. Some say dress watches have been too good of a deal for too long, so this may be an overdue correction as well. Others theorize that collectors who started as fans of steel sport watches are now branching out into other categories and diversifying their collections. Just like the Greek alphabet, we are ending with Omega. The heritage brand has recently been snatching up market share in the mid-tier price range. For a closer look at what's going on, let's bring in Chrono24's technical data analyst, Bjorn Roosman. Bjorn, thanks for joining us on Time is Money.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
So we're talking today about Omega in the mid-tier price range. Just for reference, what kind of price range are we talking about and how important is that for the secondary market as a whole?
So the mid-tier price range would be from $5,000 to $10,000, and in that segment, an estimated quarter of the revenue of the entire market is made. So that's a very important part of the market for all manufacturers.
So Bjorn, what kind of brands are you seeing in this price range?
In the price range, we see a lot of different brands, but there are some that have a focus on that price segment, like IWC, Cartier, Panerai, JLC, and Zenith. But the brands with the most market share there are Rolex and Omega.
Yeah, that makes sense. They both have a lot of really popular, really historic watches, and there's been kind of an unofficial rivalry between the two for a long time. What kind of movement are you seeing between those two brands, specifically in this 5 to 10K range?
Okay, so in the past, we could see that many of the most traded Rolex model lines were typically found in the $5,000 to $10,000 market segment, but they have left that market segment with most of the models. So most Submariners, GMT Masters, and Explorer 2s have moved up into that $10,000 to $20,000 market segment. And that created a lot of room for other brands to gain market shares in the $5,000 to $10,000 segment.
Well, that's a good point. It certainly made sense. As Rolex moves out, Omega has more room to move in. Are there any particular models that you're seeing as strong performers here?
So what Omega did was they placed a lot of limited production models into that $5,000 to $10,000 range, like the 007 Seamasters, the Tokyo Olympics models, and the Dark Side of the Moon Speedmasters, for instance. Those created a lot of buzz for Omega, and Omega was able to also raise the prices then of their cash cow models, like the Speedy Pro, the Seamaster 300M Professional, and also the Planet Ocean and the Aquaterra have been moving up in price lately.
That made sense. We can't talk about Omega without talking about their limited editions. Bjorn, any final thoughts on this topic?
So despite the corrections that we've seen in the market during the last 3 to 4 months, Omega's lineup seems to be largely unaffected. So there has been lots of natural growth and not very much speculation with Omega.
That's Bjorn Roosman, Technical Data Analyst for Chrono24 of our headquarters in Germany. Bjorn, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
There you have it, a snapshot of the secondary watch market for July 2022. Stay tuned for future episodes of Time is Money here on Chrono24, because time only moves in one direction, but the market does not. We'll see you next month, and as always, enjoy your watches.